So I want to read you just a little bit from Homeward. Chapter 1. Sitting on the porch with my baby sister, Elena, was always the best way for me to clear my mind. When she and I were young girls, we would sit out here and talk about everything: clothes, boys, what we wanted to be when we grew up, you name it, and we talked about it. Every little thing that ever happened to me in life got resolved on this front porch swing, sitting next to my sister. No matter how big the problem might be, within a few minutes of talking and swinging, the two of us would figure it out. We have an older sister, Katie Bell, and 3 older brothers, Lawrence and the twins, Micah and Mitchell. But Elena and I were always thick as thieves, as Mama used to call it. Elena's spirit spoke to mine and vice versa. I didn't remember when she was born, but I remembered everybody always saying on the day she took her first breath outside of Mama's belly, I pulled her close to me and I said, mine. Elena was 2 years younger than me, but she carried a wisdom about her that was like Mama's and our daddy's mama, Grandma Perkins. Elena wanted to be a judge someday, and when we were children, she would hold imaginary court and solve everything from who got the biggest piece of sweet potato pie to who got to be the pitcher when we would all get together with the cousins and play baseball. But now I had a problem so big I wasn't sure whether anybody short of God was going to be able to fix it. I was 21 years old, and right now it felt like my life was crashing down right in front of me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Mainly because I caused the crash. What are you going to do, Rose? Elena finally asked, interrupting my thoughts. It was a rare thing for Elena to lead with a question instead of an answer, but after I told her my awful news, she had no words of wisdom. That scared me. If Elena didn't have a solution, I didn't know how I would figure this out. I don't know. I rubbed my swollen belly. I was pregnant with a baby that didn't belong to my husband, Jasper. I wrote that story about my mother, my birth mother, because she had a very similar story. Her husband, an amazing man, Joel Hall, who's like my dad, and has really been like my dad since my dad died, my adopted dad died. And I really wanted to understand her better. And one thing I've learned as a writer is that the best way for me to unpack things is to write about it, to really try to give my confusion to a character and let them work it out on the page. And so writing this story was equal parts me writing a story that was interesting to me, but also getting into the mind of my mother. And I'll have to say that by the time I reached the end of the book, I felt like I had a better understanding of her and where she came from and how she got to the place that she did. This second excerpt is from further into the book. The individuals in this story are actively involved in the civil rights movement. But I wanted to unveil a few things about the civil rights movement. One big thing is that not every black person in the South was involved with the civil rights movement. That was shocking to me as a little girl growing up in Alabama, because I just assumed everybody marched with Dr. King. No one sat, or everyone refused to give up their seat on the bus. That everybody was fighting for freedom in the same way. When I asked my daddy, what did you think about the March on Washington? Because I just knew that he and King had to be arm in arm. And he said, well, it was nice to watch on the television. I'm like, the television? would you allow something that historical to happen in your lifetime and you not actively take part in it? And he says, baby, so many of us were just trying to live. Well, as a young girl, I thought, well, that's the most silly answer I've ever heard. Why wouldn't you want to be a part of history? Why wouldn't you want to be a leader in the movement? But then I look at us now, and how many moments have we allowed to sort of pass us by because we were too afraid to say something, or we were too afraid to push an issue, or we were just too afraid, period. So I feel like if I can't judge my generation for some of the moments we missed out on, I can't judge my dad's generation either. And so I wanted to write about a family that struggled with this movement thing, who were good people, but just felt like, let's just do the right thing and wait. If we wait long enough, freedom will come to us. We don't have to go and get it. So this is sort of modeled after what happened with my grandfather and my dad. Good morning, ma'am, I said, trying to sound as pleasant as possible. I'm here to what? She snapped before I could finish, tapping her fingernails on the counter like I was holding up a long line of people. I was determined not to get flustered, so I continued to smile. I'm here to register to vote, I said, trying not to shake or stutter, which was almost impossible with the awful glare on that woman's face. We're not registering voters today, she said. Come back tomorrow, or maybe the day after. Ladies, my name is Senator Jimmy Earl Ketchums, he said, his voice stern like a teacher. You are required to register this woman to vote. Your stated hours say you are registering voters today. Please do your job. When she heard him say this, her entire demeanor changed. Yes, sir, Senator, she said. We do have the discretion to change our days and times of operation, but we'll go ahead and test this woman if you like. She then asked for identification and all of the questions about where I lived and what I did that Isaac and the others had prepared us for. Then she asked me if I could read or write. Yes, ma'am, I can do both. Well, before you begin the test, she said, you will need to read to me the Georgia Constitution. Start reading page 1 and stop when I tell you to stop. If you miss a word or mispronounce a word, you automatically fail. Understand? Yes, ma'am. I had just practiced reading it out loud to Daddy this morning before breakfast. I knew I could do it. I read each word carefully and slowly, and I made sure I read it loud enough that she and everyone in that office could hear me. It wasn't long before she stopped me. Fine, fine, she snapped. Go over there and take this test. You have 29, you have to get 29 out of 30 questions correct. You've got an hour. An hour, Senator Ketchums asked. Since when is there a time limit on the test? We close voter registration in an hour. That's the law. If you don't like it, then you can take it up with my supervisor, who happens to be out today. It's okay, I said hurriedly. I won't need longer than an hour. Thank you, ma'am. I hurried over to the table in the corner. She stopped me as I started to sit. You can't sit. That's the rule. You can stand. Yes, ma'am. I began looking through the test. The questions were difficult, but I knew the answers. It was awkward trying to stand while writing, but I put the test on the back of my purse and I began writing with a fury. How many electoral votes does Georgia have in the Electoral College? 12. What is treason against the state of Georgia? Levying war against her, adhering to her enemies, giving them aid and comfort. What does the Constitution of the United States provide regarding the right of citizens to vote? The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, previous condition of servitude or sex, so saith the 15th and 19th Amendments to the United States Constitution, Code Sections 1 through 820 and 1 through 827. My hand was flying, but I was careful to make sure my printing was neat and easy to read. Isaac had encouraged us to print instead of using cursive because he said that they would use any reason to say no. I made it to the final question, and it was one that I had just answered the other day when we were studying. It said, how does the Constitution of the United States provide that it may be amended? As I wrote the answer, I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I knew that I had passed. I looked up at the clock when I was finished. I had 5 minutes to spare. I went up to the desk and I laid it down. I went back and stood next to Senator Ketchum's. What do you think? He asked. The tears did fall, but I didn't try to stop them. I passed, sir. I knew the answers to every single question. He patted me on my back. Good girl. You're smart. You're just like your mother. She never thought she was smart, but she was. Still is, I imagine. Here's your voter registration card, the woman said, placing it on the table. I walked over and picked it up. I couldn't stop the smile on my face. Thank you, ma'am, I said. You ladies have a blessed and wonderful day. I turned and walked to the door where Senator Ketchums was standing. He nodded at the ladies and then we walked out. Once we made it outside, I saw everyone looking towards me expectantly. I waved the card in the air and the parking lot erupted into applause and screams. My family rushed up to me and Daddy pulled me into an embrace. I knew you could do it, he said. I just knew it. Everyone came up and congratulated me. It felt good for us to win. It felt good to know that they didn't get one over on us this time.